If you grew up in fundamentalist Christianity as I did, you're probably very well aware that many fundamentalist Christians believe that the King James translation of the Bible is the only preserved Word of God in the English language, and is therefore the only Bible that Christians have any business using. According to these Christians, all other versions are what they refer to as perversions. These perversions were supposedly created by shadowy organizations like the Jesuits for the express purpose of watering down the Word of God, taking out the blood, casting doubt on the deity of Jesus Christ, and other such things. Now, I don't want to get too deeply into this. This is a very deep, very strange rabbit hole. But I just want to draw attention to one aspect of the issue that I think fundamentalists may want to reconsider. It's not uncommon to hear fundamentalist Christians say things like, I use the authorized version. Some of them will even put this on church signs. I can think of like 3 churches within 5 to 6 miles of where I live where they either have King James, KJV only, or AV1611 actually on their signs. This is a point of pride with them. I use the authorized version, or the authorized version is the only version for me. You'll see this on social media, again on church signs, in discussion forums, all over the place. Some people even use AV1611 or something like that on their avatars on Facebook and other such places. So yeah, big point of pride with many fundamentalists. And this is a bit confusing to me when you consider the terminology. Authorized version. What does that mean exactly? Authorized by whom? Well, not by God. The King James Version was authorized by the King and the Church of England. In other words, it's a state-sanctioned Bible. The King authorized the translation, and the Church of England also wanted a new translation. Well, the Church of England is the official church of the British state. It was created by King Henry VIII when he wanted to divorce his wife, and Rome wouldn't let him, so he split with the Roman Catholic Church and created the Church of England. So when fundamentalists are proudly waving the King James around or putting it on their signs or whatever and calling it the authorized version, what they're saying is, I have a state-sanctioned Bible. But fundamentalists are typically not the type of people who want the state sanctioning anything they do. I mean, they're very independent fundamental Baptist churches. That's typically where you see this kind of thing. And again, it's all over the signs in the literature, and they very proudly proclaim these things. They are independent. They don't need anybody telling them what to do. So it's kind of odd that they take pride in a state-sanctioned version of the scriptures, a state-sanctioned translation. Just think for a moment what would happen if the President and Congress of the United States attempted to commission a Bible translation that they were going to recommend American churches use. If you come from fundamentalism, you just like me, you can imagine what the response would be. You know exactly what it would be. Independent fundamental Baptist preachers would be thundering from the pulpits. That absolutely would not fly, would not be having it. But a government did it 400 years ago, well, no problem. As a matter of fact, we'll take pride in waving that Bible around, saying we have an authorized version. Also, it's interesting to me when you get into the reasons why King James and the Church of England wanted a new Bible translation. They weren't altogether wholesome reasons. I mean, there were some translation issues. There were a number of issues that went into it, a number of factors, including translation issues that they thought ought to be corrected. But the fact of the matter is, the Church of England wanted a translation that would uphold its ecclesiastical hierarchy more than something like the Geneva Bible did. And for his part, King James wanted a translation without the Geneva Bible's marginal notes, a few of which he thought undermined the idea known as the divine right of kings, which is the notion that kings derive their right to rule from God himself and should therefore be obeyed by their subjects without question. The Geneva Bible had some notes that appeared to approve of various actions taken by people that disobeyed their sovereigns, such as the Hebrew midwives who disobeyed Pharaoh when he told them to drown the Hebrew baby boys. King James didn't like this kind of thing. So you've got the Church of England and the King of England wanting a new translation, in part in order to prop themselves up more securely atop the Word of God, using that as their basis in the eyes of the people. So that doesn't seem real wholesome to me. I mean, if you're going to translate the scriptures, as far as I'm concerned, the only legitimate reason to do that is so that the people who read them can better understand them. When you have an agenda, when you're using that translation to prop up your own authority with the Word of God in some way, shape, or form, I'm not okay with that. But fundamentalists, again, seem to just overlook this in their pride on the Authorized version. These are just a few points I wanted to raise, a few things that I just don't think many fundamentalists have thought that much about. I mean, at one time I hadn't thought much about them, but later on, as I got to studying these issues more and just reconsidering things in general, it just struck me how unusual this is. The King James, in some ways, just represents an exception that wouldn't exist otherwise. It could not be duplicated today. And I really should point out here that if you're just the kind of person who strongly prefers the King James, that's the only one you want to use, that's the one you grew up with, that's the one your heroes used, then fine. That's just a matter of personal preference. That's great. Got no problem with that at all. Also, if you are a fundamentalist, I'm just curious, and you exult in the 1611, have you ever actually seen one? Have you ever actually tried to read it? I know that, a lot of independent fundamental Baptists, they may have seen one, in a museum or a tour, or somebody brought it to the church and showed it off or whatever. You may have a page from one framed on your wall someplace. But have you ever actually tried to read it? I do not know of a single fundamentalist who actually carries an actual 1611 King James Version and reads the thing on any kind of a regular basis. Most people would find that a very cumbersome task. It's not easy reading. And I just don't know anybody who's ever done it. But all the fundamentalists I know are using the 1769 revision. I believe that's the year. One of the updated variations of it. Nobody that I know uses the 1611, but everybody still has to drag out that 1611 label. That AV1611 is what gets waved around. And that's another area of incongruence that just stands out to me, and kind of another thing I wanted to highlight here. So anyway, just wanted to throw these things out. Feel free to comment if you are a fundamentalist who really enjoys that label, that AV1611. Write and let me know why. Feel free to get out the blowtorch if you're so inclined. I'm used to it. If you take a look at the other things I've got on my channel, you can imagine why. And until next time, God bless.